I just think this is a very dangerous situation, a very dangerous situation. And to be honest, the more Russia can do to impress Donald Trump with the reality that Russia is not bluffing, it can't be pushed around, and there is a destructive consequence for trying to, get Russia to do that which it's not willing to do.
Russia's security service says a 29-year-old man from Uzbekistan has been detained over the killing of Senior General Igor Kirillov and his assistant in Moscow. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, head of the Radiation, Chemical and Biological Protection Forces, was outside a residential block early on Tuesday when an explosive device hidden in a scooter was detonated remotely. The Russian security service said the unnamed suspect was recruited by Ukrainian intelligence, according to state media agencies.
I don't know. I mean, it's first of all, it's criminal behavior. It's not military behavior. Understand that militaries don't assassinate military leaders. So it's criminal behavior by a criminal organization, Ukrainian intelligence operating for a criminal government, the Zelensky government. That's how they chose to define themselves. And the additional problem to this is that the United States and NATO are associating with these criminal elements and therefore connected to these criminal actions. I would hope that if an American military officer had been appraised of this operation, that he or she would have said not just no, but hell no, not on my watch. It isn't going to happen. We don't do this. Because what is Russia supposed to do? The Russians have behaved in a very controlled manner. Anybody who thinks that Russia's struggling on the battlefield, you need to understand that Russia has not brought to bear anything near the totality of the military force that it can be brought to bear on this issue. Russia is fully capable of destroying Ukraine in totality without using nuclear weapons. If Russia wanted to, this war would be over in a month. Ukraine would be annihilated. Hundreds of thousands of people would be killed, and Russia would be in total control. Russia can bring to bear firepower that's unimaginable, but it has opted not to do so because this is a special military operation designed to achieve limited political and military objectives. I mean, these are significant objectives. The demilitarization of Ukraine, denazification of Ukraine, and Ukraine being neutral in perpetuity. These aren't minor objectives. And I think Russia has allowed for the fact that Ukraine will resist, meaning that Russia will tolerate a certain amount of resistance. It's natural. But what Russia won't tolerate is Ukraine being turned into a proxy conflict with the West, and that's what it is today. And so, Russia has put some red lines out there, and we've seen that they're being crossed on a regular basis. I mean, when I speak to a member of Congress about what is the assessment of the U.S. intelligence community regarding Russia's threats to use, resort to nuclear weapons if pushed. I had assumed that the CIA, according to the mainstream media, had told the representatives and the Biden administration that Russia was bluffing. That's what's reported in the mainstream media. And this individual, very senior person who had received the briefing, said that's not what they said at all. They said Russia's not bluffing. And the disturbing thing was the response of the Biden administration, which is, that's okay, we're prepared for a nuclear war with Russia over Ukraine. Just let that sink in for a second, Nima. They're prepared for a nuclear war with Russia. And we know by the briefing or the response to questions at a Center for Strategic International Studies seminar gathering in November by Thomas Buchanan, the Director of Plans for Strategic Command, that we have a war plan that we're ready to implement. We believe we can win. So when that's your mindset in the U.S. government, what's assassinating a Russian general or two? This general was particularly troublesome for the United States because he had been fully appraised of the documentation regarding the operation of American-funded uh, biological labs in Ukraine, many of which, although um, sold as defensive biological warfare, contained you know we're doing work that can only be described as offensive biological war, total violation of the Biological Toxins and Weapons Convention. And this guy was calling out America. Now, I mean, his elimination doesn't, do away with the fact that Russia has this data and there are other qualified people to do this. But this is the personification of this conflict that Ukraine, for whatever reason, believed that it would benefit by taking out a man who was embarrassing the West. Did Ukraine operate on its own volition, or were they encouraged or even directed to do so by the United States and NATO? We don't know, but it doesn't matter. No sovereign state can allow senior general officers or anybody to be assassinated willy-nilly in their capital and then have that go unresponded to. I put a post out earlier today on X where I liken this to bank robbery. I mean, bank robberies happen. If I wanted to right now, I could get up out of my seat, get in my car, go and rob a bank. Can't stop me from doing that. What you can do is make the punishment for my robbing a bank, so absolutely, horrific that I will sit here and go, well, it's not in my interest to rob a bank. I'm not going to do that. Or if I do it, for other people to say, whoa, man, we ain't robbing banks. And this is what has to happen now. Ukraine has, not for the first time, assassinated people in Moscow. But here we have a senior general killed in Moscow. Left unresponded to, it will happen again. And then at some point in time, out of this act of desperation, Ukraine will attempt to kill the president of Russia or other senior government officials. Ukraine has to be put on notice that, and the West has to be put on notice that this cannot happen. I can tell you right now with absolute certainty that if any nation assassinated a senior general officer of the United States military in Washington, D.C., the United States would make that entity pay the heaviest possible price. The heaviest possible price. Because it can't. The whole concept of deterrence is you don't even consider doing something because the consequences will be so absolutely horrific that it's just not worth it. And we have to make it clear to anybody that you just can't go knocking off, general officers. We had a situation in the United States back when I was just after I'd finished doing my work in the Soviet Union as an inspector, where we had a member of the on-site inspection agency killed outside of the Pentagon by terrorists who fled. Well, we hunted down those terrorists and we brought those terrorists to justice. That was an act, an individual act. It wasn't something state-sponsored. Had it been state-sponsored, had, for instance, Pakistan sent this person to kill an American officer in Washington, D.C., we would have blown Pakistan off the map. That's just the way it is. And Ukraine now needs to be punished in a way that, that's just my opinion. I can't speak for the Russian government. They have broader strategic objectives in mind. There are many who say this is what Ukraine wants Russia to do. But this isn't an overreaction. I don't think Donald Trump would sit there and say, nah, because all Putin has to do, what would you do, Donald? What would you do? Okay. What would you do, Donald Trump, if Iran killed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff? What would you do? Blew him up outside of his home on his way to work. What would you do? And Trump knows what he would do. And so I think Russia right now literally has a blank check to hold Ukraine accountable and establish deterrence so that this kind of criminal act never again takes place. But again, that's a Russian decision that only Russia gets to make. I'm just coming at it from my perspective.